No Honor, Shadows of Love, Someone Like Her in the Company of Strangers, books that explore social issues in Pakistan, issues such as gender inequality, honor-based violence, class divide, and corruption. Today, I have the author of these deeply emotional stories, Mr. Awais Khan. Hello, welcome to Writersmelon, Awais.
Hello, thank you
And
so much, Priyanka.
yes, and I wonder what really is honor. And, when I was reading through your book, which was set in authentic rural Pakistan, and there were characters which, almost started speaking to me after the first few pages. And I was wondering what really is honor and who bears the burden to protect it? Is it the daughter or her father or the entire village? So, Avais, tell me what first compelled you to write this story?
Well, it's very interesting that you asked me this because initially I was very hesitant about writing about this because not because it's an important topic or anything, it is a very, very important topic and it affects everyone, not just in Pakistan, but also in India, Bangladesh, and
Exactly.
everything. But my hesitation came from the fact that I'm a man writing about this, and I didn't know if I could do justice to this, to such a sensitive issue. And initially, what I did was I wrote a couple of chapters, and one of the first chapter actually got published as a short story in a very prestigious publication called the Aleph Review. So that got me thinking that, okay, maybe I have written something good. So then I sent the chapters to my agent in the UK and I said that I don't know, I'm a man. Do you think I'm well equipped to write? And she took one look at them and she's like, Abes, go ahead. You have my, vote of approval. So
Amazing.
yeah, I think then I sort of believed that, okay, I think I can write it. So
So,
yeah.
as a writer from Pakistan, writing for a global audience,
Yeah.
so how do you navigate this? And for topics like this, of course, there is a lot of responsibility. There is a cultural representation that you bring to the table. So, how do you prepare yourself for it? Is something that you really lean on to what's happening around you? And we still have Netflix series made on these topics, right? So, how do you navigate these things and how do you take this responsibility of being able to write such important topics?
Yeah, again, a great question. I think the responsibility lies in doing your research as thoroughly as possible because although this is a fictional account, but it is rooted in true events. So anyone who does their research on the subject properly, I feel then can be capable of writing about such a sensitive issue because otherwise there is always a threat of sensationalizing a very, very important, a very, sensitive issue and dramatizing it in a way. So I
Absolutely.
it took 3 years for me to write this book, and most of that time was spent doing research because I had to go to South Punjab and I had to actually go and see, gain the trust of the people in the villages there around in the rural areas and everything. And only then would they didn't even speak to me initially directly. They would speak through someone because, there is a whole, in these small villages they're very small, so everyone knows one another, and then there is always that sort of hesitation in speaking because they don't really know who to trust.
Correct.
So if you are able to do that research, then I think you are able to write about an issue like this as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it shows in the way even the language or even the sentences are constructed. Most of the times, the characters were really coming alive. Like I could really feel that scorchy heat of afternoon where someone is
Yeah.
lying on their charpai. I could literally feel that heat, and I think that itself is such good storytelling. And that just drew me into the book and your writing style. One thing that I also have learned about you is that you are really, let's say, a proper writer because you have had like a proper training around writing. Like most of us, at least for me, I can say that I do 100 other things, and writing is one of them, which is like becoming more and more part of my life these days. But you're like have dedicated yourself completely to writing. That's what it looks like as of now. So tell me, what do you study in these creative writing courses? How long was it? What did you learn, and what can you tell it for someone who needs to kind of um, get into that shoes of writing
Yeah, yeah.
so extensively?
Well, first of all, I'm very glad that I give that image that I'm only writing. It's not, that's not true at all. I think that writers, unless you are from that top 1%, only then can you sort of
Correct.
teach everything and focus only on writing, because then the money sort of makes sense. But
Absolutely.
at the moment, because it doesn't pay as much initially as it does later on, so you have to, do other stuff as well. But the thing about creative writing courses is that I feel that they're really good as a starting point, and they're really mid-career thing as well, just to refresh what you've learned. So I initially I used to take short on small online courses, but I really dipped into creative writing by taking the 6 month novel writing course with Faber Academy. And that was where I think that the course, the batch had, and the sheer duration of the course enabled me to actually finish writing my book. And that I think it was really, really beneficial. So then I went ahead and took 3 month editing course with them as well. And I think that really helped me too. But it was like it was a 6 month course, and it was online actually, which I think made it a lot better in many ways, because you didn't really have the hassle of going to the actual institution or whatever, and we could all interact whenever we wanted. And it was the people I met through that course, and I know a lot of them even today, and that was like 2012 and 14 years ago, and I still know them really well. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Amazing. So tell us things about craft and narrative that most of us miss out. Like what do you think helps you the most when it comes to uh, leaning back to what you have learned versus what you have to constantly evolve and create yourself. Like writers are completely creating things out of thin air, right? We are, and especially in fiction, you are creating a world, you are creating people who just live in your heads um, most of the times, right? So, what are these things about craft and narrative that you think some of us miss, some of the authors miss out, or you have specifically learned and adapted?
Well, the when it comes to advice on creative writing and tips, a lot of people ask that. I think the simplest tips are the most effective in general. You see, just like you can't really be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer or anything like that without reading and studying. Similarly, you can't. I don't think you can be a writer if you're not a reader. So you have to be first and foremost a reader. And another way is that when you do read, you have to read like a writer. You shouldn't read like a reader if you want to improve your writing. So
What
yes,
is
I
to
mean,
read like a writer?
so what I mean is that you have to focus rather than just reading. You have to focus on what you're reading. Like for example, a lot of what writing is observation. So observation, by that I don't really mean looking at stuff. What I mean is that asking questions. Like for example, if you see a man sitting on a bench eating an ice cream, you have to ask questions. Why is he there? What could he be doing? What do his features say? Why is he eating an ice cream like at 12 p.m. In the middle of summer? What could have brought him to this point? So all of these questions, that builds a story in your head. It may not be a true story, but that's the whole point of creative writing, that it's not true. It's all made up anyway. So I think these kind of things really help. And questioning whatever you see, all of these things. So observation is very, very important when it comes to writing. And my third tip would be another very simple one, is to keep a journal. And a lot of people say that, can we write our notes in the phone or whatever? I'm like, do whatever is right to you. If you want to jot your notes down in your phone, that's totally fine as well. But the importance of note taking is very important in writing, because we live very busy lives and very technologically advanced lives, and we tend to forget things very quickly. So if you have an idea, we sometimes you even wake up with an idea. You have this dream and you're like, this would make for the best plot ever, and you go and take a shower and you come back and you've forgotten everything. So this is the problem. So whatever you do think of, immediately jot it down. You don't have to write a full page, just a couple of lines that will help you help jog your memory later on. So yeah, so these are just this, the simplest stuff is generally the most effective in writing.
Absolutely. Coming back to your story itself, Awais, like I really love the way you put the dual perspective of Abida and Jamil. Why did you want to make sure that both the perspectives are covered? Like, wasn't it enough to just tell the story from the eyes of Abida?
Yes, you see, again, what my intention was that to break stereotypes. Now, our part of the world, South Asia, usually gets a lot of flack for being a certain way, and we are portrayed in the media a certain way in the West, and which is exactly why when people come to Pakistan or India or Bangladesh when they visit, and they're like, "Oh, we had no idea that these countries were like this. Oh, we had no idea that they're not just a bunch of shanty towns and all of that, and that people are so enlightened and liberal and so friendly and all of that. So that is all a sort of, that's a narrative that is built against the global South. So I wanted to break that. I wanted to show that, yes, while a lot of fathers would be against it, but not all fathers in Pakistan or in South Asia. So there are good men that exist as well, and Abda's father is one of them. So I really wanted to break that stereotype, of the evil mother-in-law, of the evil of the stereotypical father. So I wanted to write something different for once. You know?
Yeah, that was actually coming through it. So when I was
Yeah.
reading a little bit, I mean, the entire backstory of Jamil was coming to me in the sense that it was also reflecting or predicting in a way how he would act in the future. So that was something that was definitely I was observing, but still there is this suspense, or there's a element of mystery that you build around this character, which was endearing, and I was hoping that it goes in that direction, and it did fulfill my expectation, is what I can tell you as a reader,
I'm
and
so glad.
and moving to Abida, so how did you get to these metaphors and these smell like cinnamon. So some of these metaphors and the way you described it was so interesting. So, what are your inspiration when it comes to fiction? Like, what do you read, and how does your inspiration for these characters come from?
Yeah, the way you appreciate these metaphors is basically a sign that, we're all from South Asia. Because if you are from South Asia, you would be able to, feel the charpai thing, the cinnamon and the smell of the cooking and all of that. So I think that it comes from not just from reading, but I think it comes from lived experience of Pakistan, of India, of Bangladesh, of, all South Asia. It's obviously with different with some differences. It's more or less the same experience that a lot of people would have in this part of the world, and that is why you can also relate to this. So I think that more than reading, it was actually the lived experience that enabled me to write like this. But when it comes to reading, I actually read very different things from what I write. So I love reading thrillers and suspense and crime fiction. I love reading these days. I love reading fantasy as well. But I do read literary fiction as well. So I do read that. But yeah, I think I'll read anything as long as it's good. So that's my. I'm not very picky. So
And
yeah.
what was probably one of your hardest scene to write emotionally? Like, did you which left you so drained and so exhausted? Because that happens to me often whenever I'm writing. There are moments in the story where you feel that you have just given everything uh, from yourself. So
Yeah.
was there any scene that you could recollect that
I
writing it was
yes.
just too
I
much?
I feel I feel the scene between towards the like the middle of the book or after the middle of the book. There is that scene between the feudal lord and his wife. What was her name? Nigar. It was her. Yes, I think it was Nagar. Yeah. So the way she was treated by her husband when
Hmm.
she used to have daughters, that I felt was very tricky scene for me to write and very difficult as well. And I had to really rein in all these emotions and everything and make sure that I did not go overboard because it's very important not to be too graphic as well
Yeah.
because you have to sort of think about the reader's sensibilities as well that anything that is too graphic can be very triggering for readers. So you have to take care. But yeah, that was, I think, a very difficult scene to write for me. So
And and what about writing violence and trauma? Like, um, do you kind of really then hold yourself back when you write
I
it?
it totally depends on the kind of scene it is. As long as it's not gratuitous, then I think you can. But as the moment you enter that gratuitous territory, like if violence is for the sake of violence, or if let's say you're adding graphically intimate scenes for the sake of that drama or that then it becomes a bit much but as long as the scene requires it then I think that then you're doing a huge disservice to the scene by not adding it. So that is why I didn't take anything out when I was writing about that particular scene where she's taken to the riverbank to be drowned and all of that. I did not shy away from anything because I felt that in that moment that was
That's the
her truth.
truth.
That was the reality, and to sort of pack it as something more trivial would have been wrong. So,
Okay, tell me about the other two books because I haven't read them
yeah.
yet,
Well,
but I plan
I
to at least look at
so
them.
I did three other books, and In the Company of Strangers and The Shadows of Love are both part of a series. So, In the Company of Strangers was my debut, and In the Shadows of Love is my latest book so far. So you can imagine that it was quite a journey because I wrote that book after 12 years, 12 years after writing In the Company of Strangers. So a lot of people come back to me and they say that we can see from the two books how
The
your
growth.
writing has evolved. So I'm like, obviously, it must have evolved after 12 years. I hope so. So, yeah, that one is about the secrets and lies of Lahore's elite.
Okay.
Someone like her is actually, I think, a very good book and it's very different because it's the first book that is not entirely set in Pakistan. So it is set between Pakistan and the UK. So that's my first foray into London. And I really had a very, very tough time writing someone like her, the London parts, because even though I've been visiting for the last 10, 12 years, but when I actually began writing about London, I was like, no, I'm writing like a tourist. So it took a lot of hard work to write like a native, you
So
know?
this was your first book where you forayed the setting out
Yes.
of Pakistan.
Yes, that was my first one. I have written another one now that is partly set again in London, but that's what I tell people that even after all this time I've spent in London, I find it so hard to write about it. So you shouldn't. A lot of writers, ask me that can we write about Paris, set our novel in Paris? Can we set it in New York? I'm like, only if you have spent your lives in those places, then you can write it. But otherwise, it becomes very hard if you've not visited or not spent a lot of time in that place. You get the nuance wrong
Mm.
and the readers, they're very clever these days. They'll catch you like this. They'll be
Mm.
like, no, this is not how France is, this is not how London is. So it's very important to be to know your place.
How does it feel to tell these stories about your country to a global audience? I'm always curious. Like, do you think everyone would relate to it? Do you think someone who has never lived in Pakistan would relate to it, or who has never lived in India would relate to the
I
story? Or have
I
they?
think Yeah, I think that is the beauty of fiction, isn't it? That it helps us relate to things that we may not have experienced. I mean, I've never been to Africa, but I love Chimamanda Adichie's books, and I really feel like I'm in Nigeria when I'm reading her books. And I've learned so much about African culture from her books and from other, African authors as well. I've never been. So I do feel that literature can teach so much to people who have never been to this part of the world, and it really opens their eyes and not just their eyes, but also the eyes of the people who actually live here. So they, because you may have noticed this as well, that in Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, the thing is that we live in bubbles. The cities are like bubbles. We don't know what is going on outside of
Very
the
true.
city. In the rural areas, life is very, very different. And we sit in our, air-conditioned homes, and we pass these judgments and we pass these comments about people, but we don't even know what's going on.
Absolutely.
So so I feel that in that way, books like No Honor can be an eye opener for people of our own people as well. So so
What do you
yeah,
think is your best work so far, Awais? Like, of
the
course,
one you've read.
really? Okay.
I feel that because it's the one that I spent the most amount of time with, because 3 years is not, it's not easy. It was,
And to live in that kind of
yeah,
story,
it's a
like holding it in you.
exactly, and it's a very draining experience to be with a book for 3 years. And I think, I think the time really helped, and it made it something much better.
It was so wonderful talking to you, Awais. I really enjoyed reading your books, and I feel that running Writers Melon for such a long time gives me this honor and this good fortune that I can also reach out to the authors and they agree to talk to me. So thank you
Absolutely,
so much for being there and
my
sharing your
pleasure.
journey.
No, my pleasure entirely, Priyanka, and thank you so much for having me. It's always so nice to connect with people from all over the world, especially from across the border. And I think you're probably somewhere else, not in
I
India.
live in Berlin. I live in Germany, and
Oh,
like a non-resident Indian, I always look for stories which helps me connect back. And even the story that I'm trying to write is what you have probably tried to write, which is set between Pakistan and UK. I'm
oh,
trying to write
excellent.
something between Berlin and Mumbai, the cities
Well,
that I have
that
lived
is,
in.
I can't wait to read it, and I hope that, it comes out soon so
I
we can,
hope so too.
it's for sure. And thank you so much once again for having me. It was really nice being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Okay,